one with the sky, the earth and the sea. I am one with the sky, the earth and the sea. I am one with Sai for eternity.
He has been actively involved in the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization for the last 3 decades. That's the last 30 years. He currently serves as the co-chairman, SSIO Humanitarian Relief Committee, the Zone 1 Medical Director. So Zone 1 is USA, Canada and West Indies. And he's also the member of the International Medical Committee. In the USA, he has been serving as the National Young Adult Advisor as well, currently. Dr. Hari has coordinated multiple local and international medical camps, including in the USA, Prashanthi Nilayam, in Guyana, Kazakhstan, Africa, along with several disaster relief missions in it's basically across the world. USA, Sri Lanka, Haiti, Philippines, Ecuador, you name it, he's been there. At the professional level, Dr. Hari is a tenured professor of medicine in the Division of Gastroenterology, University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. In addition to the patient care, he has been actively involved in the clinical research and education in USA and globally. He has won numerous local, regional and national awards for education, mentoring, humanism and community service, and some of which include Commendation Medal for Exemplary Performance of Duty from the US President Bill Clinton, Dean's Award for Community Service, Educator Award from the American Gastroenterological Association. And on a personal note, I've actually known him in the National YA team while I was part of it. He continues to be in the National YA team as an advisor to all of us. In spite of his busy schedule, he's always been made himself available. Like, look at all that he's doing. And he's always been there, in person, like fully present to whoever is needed. So that's something that inspires me and a lot of us young adults actually. And on top of all this, why is he here? he's running the San Francisco full marathon. Full marathon? It's 26.2 miles. So tomorrow morning, it's starting at 5 a.m. We need all your prayers. But yes, so with that, I'm pretty sure we'll all be more inspired to run and walk every aspect of our life. So Dr. Hari, welcome again.
My humble pranams at the divine lotus feet. Respected elders, brothers, sisters, young adults, and kids. It's such an honor for me to be here and be part of this incredible celebration of this center, this ashram, and that too on the special occasion of the 5th anniversary. Yesterday I was able to be there and speak at the Tri-Valley Sai Center. I see some from the center yesterday, so part of my talk might be like a repetition for you. But one of the very unique things of being in a Sai community is that we share our joy with each other, and I think that kind of continues to motivate us, inspire us, and do a lot of work, service that Swami wants us to do. And today I'm speaking, but I think any of us in this room can speak and really inspire each one of us. I truly, truly believe in the aspect of inspiration, that each one of us can inspire each other. Next slide. Again, the topic, the theme for the program today is Self is the Ultimate Guru, and Swami has many a time talks about self being the Atma, the divine in each one of us, and really he exemplifies the importance of us being aware that the divine is in each one of us. Swami, to all of us, to myself, is my divine father. I actually address him as father. my guru, my constant source of inspiration and giving. It's not just inspiring, we get inspired, but what do we translate that to is very, very important in our lives. We take something, but we got to act on it, and that is the giving aspect of who we are. And as I was mentioning, Swami always talks about seeing the divine in each and everyone. Sometimes, we're used to looking at each other and studying them, get to know them before we actually make a decision about, is this a person that I like? Is this a person that I want to be associated with? Even in the Sai family, it's not just we jump in and talk to everyone, right? When we enter a center, we say Sai Ram, but we don't actually go beyond the next step unless we really know each other. One thing I've been doing more intentionally in the recent past is the first thing I see anyone, it doesn't matter who it is, someone on the street, at work, or anyone, really think to myself, there is divine in that person. That's the first thing. And then the rest comes, rather than the other way around, which we are so used to in doing in life. And that's completely changed how I view everyone, how I look at everyone. And one of the aspects of following Swami's teachings, his being the ultimate, the highest guru for us, is that we actually see that transformation within ourselves. That's the most beautiful thing, I think. We always have to kind of stop and reflect on where we were in the past. Could be even a day before, could be 10 years before, and where are we now? Have we made any progress? Are we satisfied with where we are heading? And in every quote, in every way, Swami always talks about love. And to me, that aspect of loving someone is such a beautiful thing. And I think, again, we want it to come very naturally, but sometimes we do have to work at it. That is, being very intentional about, I'm going to love this person. Every person that we see, doesn't matter what the external is. Swami always says, every single person, the aspect of divinity in them, and the aspect that we need to love that person, irrespective of what we see. And that is, it might look challenging, but the more we do it, I find it, such a beautiful experience, and really makes me a better person, actually, when we do that. That's very, and this love should be unbiased and unconditional. Next slide. Before we go too far, and I think this is something I've never used to be very good at. I do my work. Of course, we serve and all that. But one thing I've realized over the years is that stop and pay gratitude. Of course, we always pay gratitude to Swami, what he has given us. But there's so many people in our lives that we need to give gratitude to, starting at home, our family, and everyone, whether it's, and it doesn't matter with age. To me, the aspect of inspiration, the aspect of gratitude belongs to everyone. I see a young kid, I can learn something from them. They're doing something for us. Think of, reflecting a gratitude to that young kid. It's not about me being an elder or that being a kid. They're teaching us something by doing that service. And Swami says, true sacrifice consists in sharing with others one's wealth, strength, qualities, which are all derived from society. So we have to be constantly vigilant of the fact that we live in a society, in this country, obviously, or wherever we are in the community, whether it's our Sai community and the broader community as well that we live in, we really need to kind of go back and pay gratitude to that society. When I think of, earlier we heard the message from Swami, the aspect of Guru who kind of, takes away all the ignorance. To me, when I think about that, one is the aspect of removing that ignorance. The other side is reflection of his message in giving and how we conduct ourselves in our daily lives. Every aspect of our conduct, to me at least, should be a reflection of his message in some aspect of the other. I think people have to experience Swami through us by the way we conduct ourselves. Thank you, brother. We all identify with Swami in one form or the other. It's important that we identify ourselves with self, and I think that's important because we need to be very confident in what we do, and because that will help us be better in our lives. It also helps us help others better as well. We hear a lot of times, I can't do this, or I'm not eligible to do this. When I hear praise, people always, are thanking me or praising me for things that I do. The first thought that comes to me is, this is all reflection of Swami. Swami giving that opportunities. I'm taking advantage of that, and it's nothing about me, actually. It's really about Swami. And I think that's how, I look at it in my life. We identify ourselves with our family, the bigger, beautiful Sai family or friends, with the organization. And that is very important as well, right? When we do work in any particular setting, in my case, I work for the University of Michigan, I identify myself, what I do on a day-to-day basis with the organization. The principles of the organization, I have to agree with, and I have to conduct myself in that space, and that's when we do our best. Same thing with the Sai organization as well, right? Because the organization, of course, we are the unit of the Sai family, but we are part of an organization, and I think we have to reflect on that from time to time. The organization is kind of providing that resources, that food for our thoughts, everything that we need. It really comes back to the organization. That's very important for us to identify with this organization. It's important, we always talk about following someone. I always say amongst us or amongst any group that we work with, there's a leader and there's followers. It's good to be either, actually, because not everyone feels comfortable or can lead, but all of us can follow. And in this regard, following Swami to me is the ultimate exercise, a beautiful exercise. And we emulate a lot of people. And I think that's actually, I love to emulate people that I see that goodness in, whether it's a child, young adults. I always talk about young adults. I learned so much from young adults, how to be, how to do, how to see, and I think they make me reflect on how I should be, how thoughtful I should be. It's very important. Just because I'm a professor or I'm an elder, it doesn't automatically make the person that I am. I take that from others as well. At the same time, I think we have to use our discrimination to not follow and not emulate as well. And I think Swami always talks about the power of discrimination. He once told me, you have that discriminatory power, when I asked him a question. And that is important as well. And to me, it is like, I tell my students and trainees, we see each other, we get influenced with each other. A good example is student working with a professor, and the professor might be doing things that the student doesn't agree with. I tell students, you're at the fork of a road. You can decide whether you want to go the right way or you want to go the wrong way, especially if you think that professor is actually going in the wrong direction. All of us have that capability of doing that. Sometimes we see that amongst people who are very close to us, but we still have to, remain with that conviction that we want to follow Swami's message, we want to do the right thing, and not oblige just because the next person to you is a Sai brother or a Sai sister. That doesn't mean you don't love them. You love every single person, but it doesn't mean you have to follow something that they're doing which you think is not the right thing. Next slide. There's a lot of people who have influenced me in my life. as gurus, teachers, we always look up to some people as mentors or teachers who have taught us things in our lives which will never, fade away, right? And my father, growing up with my father, I used to just absolutely just adore him. I mean, I was just like the absolute idol for me. And, he used to, at the same time, I used to be very upset with him sometimes too, because he was always giving. I didn't understand when I was very young the aspect of giving, the bliss of giving when you're young, because he used to give things that I thought belonged to me, to people on the streets. I'm like, I recognized one day, I was in the car, I was looking for this cloth we had brought from the U.S. This was in India. We went back to India, and I couldn't find it. I searched everywhere in the house, and no one said anything. My father didn't say anything, and I was going somewhere in the car. I was sitting in the back car, and I see this bicycle coming next to me, and there's this kid wearing that cloth, a shirt. I mean, this was from the U.S. I'm like, that is my cloth, right? And I was not happy. So, and it was a huge cloth, and then of course I put two and two together. I went home and asked my dad, and he said, yeah, I gave the entire cloth to our teacher, who had I think 6 or 7 kids, to get the clothes stitched. Till then I didn't understand the importance of giving, although originally I was very upset. But I understood the significance of that, something that you love, someone needs it. And I think we need to be very cognizant of, be aware of things around us. And I think, I don't do a good job at it, recognizing, that there's a need, and I think to me, the people who do that, of course, Swami always does that. He knows everything. I still remember during one of the interviews, a group interview, Swami came, talked to us for about an hour. It was so blissful, and he gets up. So I was thinking, the interview is over. I was very happy for that hour. But he goes up, he goes to the corner of the room, he turns up the speed of the fan. He said, it's a bit hot in here. You're all looking very uncomfortable. He comes back and sits and talks for another half an hour. That recognition, that being aware of things around you and acting on it is very, very important. To me, the people who do that the most are the women in our lives, the mothers, sisters, aunts. They are constantly thinking of people around them and not much as for themselves. I mean, I don't think any of us, of course, we all do good things, in life, but women exemplify that aspect of recognition and acting on that. I think it's important that we acknowledge that. I lost my father when I was very young, so to me, Swami has become the ultimate father. That's why I address him as my father next. We come across people, I always say, when you do things with no expectation in return, and Swami says, when you give, when you love, it has to be unconditional. There is no, the result that you think about. You do it because your heart is telling you to. And I always believed that since I was a very young person. I thought that was so important, seeing my dad and myself as well, finding myself doing it because I want to, not because someone is telling me to. And so one day when I was in the dorms, this was in Andhra Pradesh, there was a huge storm. There's like a cyclone or hurricane, and we couldn't go back to our towns because all the roads were destroyed. So this truck comes in the morning. A lot of people, I have no idea who these people are. They came to our dorm, all young teens. They're like, hey, you guys want to come and help in the villages? Sure. I've done this before, not necessarily wise all the time. If someone asked me when I was a kid, asked me to come with them, I used to just go with them. I had no idea where the heck I was going. I used to just go with them. But this one, I knew there was a good goal, so I went to the villages. We were helping out. As we were helping, I see this Jeep coming through the muddy road, and the Jeep stops in front, and out of the Jeep comes Mother Teresa. She was going from town to town, village to village, really encouraging the volunteers to, and giving the message, you're doing the right thing, you're actually helping your brother and sisters, and then she talked to us for a while, and then she went, kept going. It was such a beautiful experience. I wasn't expecting that. That's what I mean, when we do things in life that we don't expect, so it may not be what we give, but sometimes, a lot of times actually, much, much more significant comes out of that result, and it's very hard to kind of, compare them. Again, being Guru Purnima, the aspect of Guru, it's very important to follow Swami's teachings. I mean, of course, there's a lot of gurus. You can listen, you can follow things you think are right, but you have to be careful. But with Swami, it is just follow, right? I mean, with complete faith and complete surrender. And that's what I meant, as Swami's devotees are just as good people. It's very important for us, that's how I feel for myself, to reflect that light, that, his message in everything that we do. There's no question about it, at least for me. This is a quote I came up with a long time ago, and I continue to use it to, I say, inspire and be inspired. We have that capacity. I think we need to have that confidence, not in an egoistic way, but simple, in humility, confidence that we can inspire others by the work that we do. It's very important, at least for me, while at the same time be inspired by everything that we see around us, whether it's a child or a young adult or an adult. And I think, to me, that's what kind of transforms us and transforms others. Being a doctor, there's so many examples of transformation that I see in my work by how I conduct myself and in the patients and in the people who work with me. I'll kind of give you a cute example. So one day, my email at the University of Michigan is omsairam@umich.edu. I don't know how that happened, because usually in the universities, you can never have your own password. It has to be part of your last name, actually. But they were asking me for some password, and I gave Om Sai Ram. Little did I realize, I'm sure little did the person who was giving me the email realize that they shouldn't have done it. But for the last 25 years, that's been my email, omsairam@umich.edu. So people always keep asking me, hey, what does Om Sai Ram mean? I always tell them, it's divine in each one of us, acknowledging the divine in each one of us. So one day my nurse, my specialty is liver disease. These are very, very sick patients. We're talking about life and death, liver transplant, things like that. So these patients are very frustrated, very angry a lot of times, because they know that they're dying. Sometimes we'll tell them, you're not getting a transplant for this, and this reason. So they showed out, their frustration first at the nurses, because the first call comes to the nurses and not to me directly, unless I'm seeing them in the clinic. So the nurses get the brunt of everything, the anger, the frustration. And it takes a toll on our nurses, actually. And so one day my nurse, Linda, comes to me and she says, Hari, I got to tell you something. She says, it was just driving me so crazy with hearing all these things. You know what I started doing? Every time some patient is yelling at her, very angry with her, she says, just raises her arms and she says, Om Sai Ram. She doesn't know what that actually means, but she said she relates that word Om Sai Ram to my calmness. She says, you're always calm despite what else is going on with the patients. You never say anything. I started doing that. I feel great. Completely switches her mind to calmness when she says Om Sai Ram. And she said, I'm able to deal with the patients. So that was such a beautiful example of, again, us helping the transformation of others while we also get transformed by others, the goodness that we see in our lives. And I think it's a two-way street, but is that that lifetime blessing that he has given me with all the work in the organization and other activities that I do as part of my university work as well, is that, I've been in so many parts of the world, at places I've never been to before, never adventured into, but one thing, if you have Swami by your side, things just happen. I never get scared to go anywhere, which is kind of interesting. You got to be careful, because Swami always talks about, hey, use your discrimination, be thoughtful about things. Don't just jump into a fire. But as you're jumping in, think about, the right and the wrong, who not to follow as well. So he has given a lot of opportunities to me over the years. And Swami says, no joy can equal the joy of serving others. Once during an interview, he, as I was mentioning yesterday, Swami gave the interview for these doctors and the volunteers. So that morning he just went to the ladies, he talked to them, he actually called them in, and all the men were like, what? What's happening here? He hasn't called us, but that afternoon, he actually called everyone. First, he calls the men, and so we all go and sit. We're all excited, and we go in before the interview room, and he's asking how many people and all that, and he said, maybe we should go into the bigger prayer room rather than the interview room. I said, no, we are all like, no, Swami, we'll all fit in. And, he made a joke. He said, yeah, right, but, some of you are like, pretty big. I don't know if you'll fit. But we're like, no, Swami, we'll fit, we'll squeeze and all that. Sometimes, he gives you that freedom, to talk just like you're talking to your dad or a brother. But there's also, we need to understand there's a seriousness. That means the more important aspect as well. Just, and we started laughing, so that's the lack of discipline, right? So, it's all, he's playing his play to teach us a lesson. When we were laughing, the women are coming towards him. Absolute silence, with hands, like this, And he says, look at the women, he said. And in Telugu, he said, Devatalu vastunnaru chudandi. Goddesses are coming, just look at them. We knew exactly what we had done wrong, so we were all like very quiet. But in the interview, he was going to everyone, he was telling everyone, what do you want? I was so very confident I was going to get a question too. I knew exactly the question I wanted to ask him. But as he was asking people, some people were asking for rings, so in my mind is playing games with me now. It's like, maybe I should ask a ring, I do like rings. But then I said, no, I'm going to ask that question. So when my turn came, I asked Swami, Swami asked me, what do you want? And I said, Swami, I want to serve you for the rest of my life. I was pretty confident. And he said, why? And I said, it makes me really happy, Swami. That's when he said, happiness is external. What you experience when you serve is joy. He said, joy comes from within. And he said, that is what you are experiencing. It was such a beautiful, I can never forget that. Anytime I think about, even using the word happy, I always think twice about using the word happy. Of course, we're happy, but immediately recognize that it's an external aspect, at least from what he said at that time. I'm sure he has used happiness in other settings as well. And part of the following Swami's teachings, he always says, follow your heart. He's always there to guide us as long as we understand it's the right thing that we want to do. And this was the International Sai Medical Conference, the first ever. It's been 20 years now in Puttaparthi. I was just an attendee at that time. I wasn't an organizer or anything. So when I go to Puttaparthi, I need to be occupied all the time. I couldn't sit anywhere, so I was trying to figure out where can I help. Believe me, I've gone to help in different places in Puttaparthi, in Prashanthi Nilayam. Once I got up early in the morning. I get up and went to the canteen. They cook. I was thinking I'll do something, and the guy, he doesn't know me. He shows me this huge pile of chilies. He said, pluck the top, what do you call that? Stem, and separate them. I said, okay, I go there. And then within few minutes, I'm like crying, and he's looking at me, and he calls me and he says, "You're not from here, are you?" I said, "No, I'm from the U.S." He said, "Why didn't you tell me?" He was seeing me in agony, trying to kind of, separate those stems of the chilies. Then he put me doing something else. But that's one thing, when we think about a service, right? I think it's very important for us, and Swami has said this so many times, and we see there's beautiful examples in our Sai families that it doesn't matter who we are, what our work is. If someone asks us to sweep the floor, let us joyfully sweep the floor. That's the beauty of it. When we go to Kazakhstan on a regular basis, these volunteers, they're cleaning the bathrooms, you have no idea who they are. Then you find out that some of them are like, international opera singers, they're dancers. I mean, they're like way up there, but they're cleaning the bathrooms. I mean, how much humility is there to do that? And I think, I always think that's how, we all should be. But so coming back to the conference, so I was helping, and I went to a band of brothers who were involved in registration. I said, hey, can I help? That's important for each one of us. If you want to do something, we may not be in a team, but there's no, you shouldn't feel shy to ask, can I help? If the answer is no, accept it. If the answer is yes, you're in that band, right? So I was in that band, helping out. And then on the last day, it was a beautiful conference. Swami, at the end of the day, they picked 9 people to come to Swami and get a memento from him, and I was one of the 9. So here I am attending a conference just as an attendee with nothing in mind. I just wanted to help, but you can see how that translated to that, I didn't have any expectations, but the price, of doing service, without any expectations, it was huge. It was such a beautiful experience. And over the years, to me, when I think of gurus or teachers, I really think of young adults as my teachers. I mean, I always say this, to me, life is very simple. Following Swami's message is very simple. I'm into love all, serve all, simple things. I just run with it. I never dug deep into the significance, which I think is very important as well. I've been doing that much more since I've been part of the YA community as a young adult advisor. I mean, these young people really think through things. They think so deep. They think about the why and the what and the how. Being in that space has really helped me, understand the significance as well. Because along the way, people are always going to ask us, whether we ask for help or ask someone to do something, they will say the why. They'll ask the why. And I think we have to be very ready with that answer for the why. So I always look at young adults as my gurus in a lot of ways as well. The Sai Katrina project was really started by the young adults. This was at a time when the organization was still not sure how to proceed after the Hurricane Katrina. The young adults, being restless as well, they said, we're not going to wait for the final yes, no. We're going to start doing it ourselves. And this was actually started by Region 5 young adults, and then it spread across the country. They called their brothers and sisters from different parts of the country. And, they needed a few chaperones. I volunteered as a chaperone, an adult chaperone. But being a doctor as well, At that time, after Katrina, what happened was a lot of people who could leave left the areas, and almost every doctor in Mississippi left Mississippi rather than serving because they went to safer grounds in other places. So they needed doctors actually. So it was really a beautiful blessing. And then we adopted a church in a town called Tylertown. The young girls did all the homework. And next slide. This was in Lee's Church, Tylertown. Shiva Paturi, was part of that team. I mean, there's so many these dynamic, iconic young girls who are today were part of that team. I was just the adult person there next. And this is the reverend there. He sees this love and, from young adults. And on the last day, he said, this is exactly what he said. He says, I don't know who you are and where you came from, but I know for sure that the Lord sent you. What a powerful statement from someone recognizing the love and the service, of what we do in our lives. We have been praying to our Lord to come to our aid, and you have brought Jesus today. He's looking at the Lord. For him is Jesus, and he's seeing Jesus manifesting in our young adults by the work that they're doing. It was so beautiful, and when he said that, everyone started crying. Everyone in the room was crying, actually. It was really beautiful as well. And, for me, on my part, when hurricanes or disaster happens in the U.S., the states will give you temporary license, but it takes, at least 3 to 4 days minimum. So I had to apply for a temporary license before I went for this trip. And I was going, I've already booked my tickets, for the Friday, and this is on a Wednesday. I'm trying to get my license, right? So I called them and said, yeah, doctor, 3 working days, Monday. I'm like, no. I'm leaving, day after tomorrow. And she said, Monday. So we go back and forth, and she said, okay, just send me your stuff. And believe this or not, this is, I think, important, as might look disappointing, or we always think things are not happening, for us not to give up that faith. Swami will help. If it doesn't, that's absolutely fine as well. We have to be ready whatever the outcome is. That is faith. It's not faith that he's going to do and to be disappointed if something doesn't happen, right? I said, of course, I was nervous about it because I wanted to get on that flight. Within not even an hour, she calls me back and she says, doctor, go and check your facts. And that was my temporary license. Within an hour, she made it happen, what would have taken, So I think, when we're trying to do good things, the people who are watching us or want to help also keep transforming. That means they are doing their best to make that happen for us. And I think we have to truly believe in that when whatever we do in our lives. So I got my license, I was able to do a lot of medical work because that particular weekend, I was the only doctor in that area. So without the doctor, no one could do anything. There were nurses, med students and all that, but they couldn't do the work without a licensed physician. And I was the only person in that town that particular day, actually. So this is, very important. And then came Haiti, and what Haiti taught me was that how we as a community of Psi people, as an organization, leverage, because we have never been really massively involved in humanitarian relief, but in Haiti, as some of you may, a lot of you may not know, we were involved in medical work every week for a full year. No other organization was involved that way. And then with Food Seva for almost 3 years, actually. A lot of these huge organizations which can do a lot, they leave after things settle down. But we stayed back. We were sending teams every single week. I was in charge of the medical, logistical, and one of the young adults, she was organizing, she was mobilizing young adults from across the country. One of the things for all of us to understand is that when we do anything humanitarian or medical, is that a lot of times we hear people saying, oh, it's only for doctors. Doctors are a minority in the bigger plan. We usually say for every single doctor, we need 5 non-medical volunteers to help, actually. Otherwise, work does not get done. So anyone, if you see announcements about medical activity, Sai was there with us in Africa, amazing, but, you learn very quickly too, and I think she learned things that she wasn't even aware of till she got there. Then you're an expert within a day. In Haiti, we literally took one brother, because I was so busy with the medical, but we needed a pharmacist. We kind of took this crash course of all the medicines, and he was our pharmacist from day 2, actually. So, so we were able to really take advantage of that, different organizations, including the United Nations, to really give so much. Next slide. And we had some beautiful experiences where Swami was very omnipresent and guiding us, and we had the U.S. Army actually accompanying us from Dominican Republic. Those days we couldn't fly directly into Haiti. And then next slide. I always say the power of the youth. The youth did so much. They empowered the youth in Port-au-Prince to really help their own communities, whether it's cleaning the roads, all the rubble, spending time with the children. We adopted 2 churches. One had an orphanage and a music school. It got destroyed. So our young adults, there's a lot of musical talent, right? They took the musical instruments and played with these kids, taught them music. It was so beautiful, actually. This was for the entire year. So we were doctors where we were going to these churches to do the medical work, and the young adults, some of them stayed back and were working with the adults, young adults and the children in the community, actually. Earlier I talked about reflecting Swami's message in everything that we do, and when we do that, people recognize, like the Reverend recognized the divine Lord Jesus in the work. This is a beautiful example of, a cute example. So one day, the 2 doctors who were involved with the church, they said, Doctor, this was on a Sunday morning, they came to me and said, we're going to the church. Do you want to come along, hang along? I said, of course, I'd love to come to the church. So I go to the church, hundreds of people there. There's a lot of priests from different churches in Port-au-Prince who came, and each priest from each of these churches, gave a short speech. And as far as I could tell, every priest was done with their speech. And then the main priest from this church gets up and he says, today we have a guest person who's going to give us a sermon today. So here I'm looking at every priest. I'm like, every priest has already spoken, and I'm wondering who's going to do it duplicate, to give the sermon, which priest is going to go duplicate. And then he announces my name as the person to give that sermon. So you have to understand, right? I'm sure they knew I'm not a Christian by birth. I've never given a sermon. I've been to churches a couple of times just for fun, but I've never given a sermon, and I'm so nervous. They speak French, so I had some time. But as I was explaining, so what do I say? Right? In that moment of fear, I was trying to remember every quote of Swami that I could remember. So my entire sermon was Swami's quotes. Love all, serve all, help all, hurt never. I was trying to encourage the people. I know you're going through a hard time, but you got to give back to the community, the serve all. So every Swami's quote. And I had time because each time I said something, the interpreter was, so here I'm thinking, what are the next quotes that I can remember? And every few minutes, the entire crowd was getting up and saying, hallelujah. And then they sit down and then hear a few of my Swami's quotes and then same thing again. So this was my sermon for that particular day. That was a beautiful example, a learning. When you think about guru, teacher, there's lessons to be learned for each one of us, right? That's what, we look at towards our gurus. To me, this experience was such a beautiful lesson to tell me that if I do my work, any of us, if we do our work, people will see that divine through us. They most likely knew that I was not a Christian. They knew that I was not a priest. For them to think that this is someone in front of us, we have seen him work, he is capable of giving the sermon to all of us. That is that power, and I think we need to be confident with that. That was a beautiful example, a learning lesson to me personally, actually. So we have gone to Kazakhstan, very simple people, but this is so. I'm being a gastroenterologist, GI specialist. We get people, they usually send people who have GI problems, and this lady comes in to us. That's my interpreter. And, within a few seconds, I realized she had no GI problems. She just wanted to talk. She went through her life, her symptoms of depression, what she was going through. That's all she wanted, actually. We were just listening and listening and listening. And, I'm still trying to figure out what the GI problem was, But at the end of the day, then, she gets up, and this word to word is exactly what she said to me and my interpreter. She said, I see peace in your eyes and love in your heart. For her, that to experience that emotion of peace and love just by being with us two, it was so powerful, and both of us were crying when she said that. It was such a powerful moment. It is not about, that I was able to give her a medicine or I was really taking care of a GI problem. That listening, that listening, and I think, is important to each one of us. Even if you look at, our own Sai centers or in the communities, we need to really sit down and listen to each other a lot more than we've been doing, and in the community as well. To me, that's one of the greatest services we can do to each other. We have, been involved in a lot of medical camps in Puttaparthi, and Swami always says, see God in everyone that we serve, and we're always very conscious. We're always thinking, we don't know when Swami is going to come. Swami could be in this person. So we've been very cognizant of it, conducting ourselves in a way that, though we are seeing 1,000 to sometimes 2,000 patients a day, it can get overwhelming sometimes. Haven't had food for hours and hours, but the work needs to be done. And so we don't want to show that frustration in any sense when a person is coming and asking you for help. The reason people ask for help, not just because they want to just ask for some random help, right? There's a reason. It's not for us to judge the why, or if it is valid or not. Sometimes we say, oh, he doesn't look like he needs that help, or whatever that is. It's not for us. At least that's how I feel. He asked for help. If I can do it, I'll do it. It doesn't matter. A lot of times, sometimes I've heard, and sometimes I feel, I think this person is cheating me or whatever it is, right? To me, at that moment, it does not matter. He came and asked, whatever his or her intention is, I've said yes in my heart, and I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter what that person's intention was, whether it's good or bad. That's how I feel. Of course, Swami always says, be smart as well, if that's important as well. And this was a beautiful statement. So Swami one day came, and we were all asking Pada Namaskar, give us Pada Namaskar. This becomes like not a habit as much, but you see other people doing it, and it's like, okay, let's kind of take advantage of that situation, of that movement when Swami's there. And he said at that time, this was part of when we were there for a medical camp, he said, the opportunity that I give to serve me in everyone here is itself my pada namaskar to you. What a profound statement that he has made. So I think, since then I've been, any opportunity to serve is that pada namaskar. It doesn't have to be the physical. And I think, we used to get caught up in that physical. We still do. When people talk about their dreams, it's a part of a physical aspect of it. But this is such a beautiful, if we kind of look at it from that perspective, we don't need anything else. So I was involved, I'll go through this quickly for time. I was involved in setting up the gastroenterology unit, the endoscopy unit in Puttaparthi. It was such a beautiful experience. And Swami had blessed the idea. He gave us the idea, so we went and asked him for the idea. Hey, can we do this? And of course he said yes. Not only did he do that, he also gave the inauguration date. So like literally like 4 or 5 months later. I've never actually worked in the super specialty hospital till that time. So here I'm trying to get everything done. It's a lot to organize an endoscopy unit. We have to order equipment from Japan. I took photos of our endoscopy unit at the University of Michigan, sent it to the engineers in Puttaparthi Hospital. Can you make it look like this? If you actually go there, it looks exactly like the way my University of Michigan still looks. So we did all that, and then I go, and so what happened was I had switched jobs, about several months earlier. I went from University of Michigan. I actually kind of quit University of Michigan, and I went to Cleveland Clinic because they created this amazing position for me. But once I got there, I wasn't very happy. I wasn't satisfied with the work that I was doing. So I wanted to come back. Before I left, my boss kept saying, you'll come back. I don't know what I was thinking. So I went back. And by this time, this was happening, about to happen. So I was planning to go and spend like 3 to 6 months in Puttaparthi, actually. So I go to my boss. Me and him are alone in the room. And he's a Chinese gentleman. I've never talked to him about Swami. I go and say, Dr. Oang, two things. One, I want to come back, and he was so happy. Two, as soon as I come back, I need to leave to India for 3 to 6 months, I said, because I wasn't sure how much he's going to give me. If he cuts it down, I thought at least 3 months would be enough. He said, oh, absolutely, Hari. And the next thing this is the most profound thing. The next thing he says is, are you going to see Sathya Sai Baba? And at that moment, it was just like goosebumps, but I knew Swami was in that room orchestrating everything. I mean, I never talked to Chung about Sathya Sai Baba. I had, a few months earlier, I got this award, a Dean's Award for Community Service. I had written about the organization and Sai Baba. I don't know if he read it, maybe he did, but this is like several months later. He's asking me this profound question of, am I going to see Sathya Sai Baba? So I knew it was going to happen, that I was going to get that leave. So I go there, and it was such a beautiful, a lot happened in those 3 months, but I'll quickly show them. So what happened was, he gave the date, July 12th, and we were all ready with the inauguration and all that. And it was overwhelming because the students were there to help, everyone was there to help, and in my mind I was thinking, God, we got to do some bhajans, It kept, but time was just passing by, and then nothing was happening. We didn't do bhajans because everyone was all ready. And then we get a word saying, Swami is not coming. And then they said he's not going to come at all. You go and start the first, because we had arranged for one of the employees to get his first scope. Because he said inauguration, that means you got to work, right? So I was all set, and I'm like, that's fine. Let's go for lunch. When we come back, let's do bhajans. So we did a few bhajans. Believe it or not, literally 5-10 seconds after we got up, from bhajan, sat in the chair. We got a call directly from Swami's mandir saying that he's going to be there in half an hour. And then we tell the seniors, they're like, no, he's not coming because he didn't tell us about it. So this is very important for all of us. Sometimes we get caught up in this, whether you think about it like a hierarchy or people we admire or people who are leaders, we forget that at the end of the day, and Swami has reminded us so many times, it's between us and him. All this doesn't matter. Of course, leaders are there to help us, guide us, support us. I like the organization, obviously. But at the end of the day, that connection is between us and Swami. And they immediately realized Swami, in fact, was actually coming. And they were like a race. They needed to be there before Swami came. And I'll show you a few. At this time, apparently, Swami had not come for so many months, about 6 months. So the entire hospital was excited that afternoon. So I was inside. I was given the opportunity to take him everywhere inside, show him the unit. And this is outside. I had no idea what was happening outside, but this is what was happening outside. You can see Swami arriving. He's coming through the hallway, and this patient, right? He was right at the front. What a blessing, right? He got the best darshan of Swami as he entered the endoscopy unit. He was waiting all day to get scoped. Swami's students, doing chanting. I was showing him around. And when he came to that lamp, the lamp had, I believe, 5 wicks. And Swami lit first, and then the student was trying to take him out, but he insisted and lit every one of those wicks. He was very, sure about that. And then he comes, there's a Swami's picture right in front, and it felt like eternity. He just was staring at his own picture. It was such a beautiful moment, actually, that picture. So here, and the person you see next to him is John, my nurse. He's never been outside U.S. So the first time he walks out of U.S. is into Puttaparthi. And he gives a flower to Swami, and Swami talks to him for a while and gives the flower back. And John is so shocked. He's like, in America, you don't give it back. You keep it, right? It's like... Then I had to pull John to the side and say, hey, this is a blessing that Swami has actually given it back to him. So I wanted not just show a video of endoscopy. We wanted to demonstrate a colonoscopy. So I got the engineers to create a pipe to show. We actually wanted to demonstrate live on the video. And I made them put a hole, and I put a jasmine bud on the inside to represent a polyp or growth. So we practiced so many times that morning. I go in, put a snare, cut it, I pick it up, and I show it to Swami. Hey, Swami, this is a polyp. What happens? I'm trying and trying and trying. We have practiced it so many times that morning. Boom! It does not cut. It does not cut. It does not cut. I'm trying. I'm sweating inside, outside. And here I am. I'm not looking at Swami because I'm worried he's going to leave the room very quickly, right? I'm praying to Swami, please make this cut. And he's right in front of me, but I'm not looking at him. I'm praying to myself, please make this cut. And finally it did, I take it out and I show it to Swami. Swami also, he knows everything, right? And he wants everyone to learn from that experience. Because we used a huge bud because I wanted to be like, boom, a big size on the screen. And he asked me, is every polyp this big? He wanted everyone else to learn. These are usually very small, but this magnification, right? So I said, no, Swami. And then he went to another room, and then we also had like an exhibition. You can actually stop here, the video. It goes for a while. It's a beautiful video. But he was so happy. we had made all this information material in Telugu, English. He was like a kid. When we go get free samples, when we go to exhibitions, things like that, he took all these things and he took all of them. He wanted like each one of them, and he goes back and he calls all the boys in the Kulwant Hall, and he narrated the entire event to them about the GI endoscopy. It was so beautiful because the boys later came into it. He told us everything that he did in the GI unit. Next slide. I stayed back for 3 months, and this is Swami's grace, because I still had to do my work. Just because I was there 3 months, it's very hard to others to cover you when you have such sick patients. So I used to work from morning till evening. We had Wi-Fi in the office, and then till almost half an hour before they closed the North Indian canteen, I used to work and then come for the last half an hour so that I don't miss my dinner. So I pretty much missed darshans the entire 3 months, other than a Sunday sometimes, because we work on Saturdays too. But this is how Swami is showing, all these people who were in the ashram and outside in Puttaparthi, things that Swami had given them over the years. Vibhuti, they were giving it to me. They were just giving it to me. What a beautiful, it's because they didn't need to, right? But they wanted me to have that. This lady, she collected some of these original and old photos in the 50s and 60s of Swami. She made this beautiful album. One day she says, this is for you. That necklace Swami had given her, she gave it to me. She had collected the sand that Swami had walked on in the 60s and 70s. She gave me the sand. She said, I want you to have this now. It's like, passing it forward, that love. It was so beautiful. And one day, I was treating this young man, a gardener. Towards the end, he knew I was leaving at the end of the 3 months. And he comes to me, he's very shy, very scared to even speak to me. He comes from the back door, and he doesn't say anything. I'm trying, hey, what do you want, He just kept saying, sir, sir, And then, so when Swami had come for that inauguration, he also went to the canteen that day because they had renovated the canteen, actually a few weeks prior to. And apparently, then he takes his pocket and he gives me this photo of Swami. That was not, of course, the Swami, every Swami's photo is precious, right? But this was a photo Swami gave him directly when he came for that, in inaugurating the canteen. How special it is, but this gentleman wanted me to have that. Just to show his gratitude and love for me because I did something for him. See that absolute love, right? How do we kind of maintain that at all times? We want things from Swami, but we're not very eager to give it, not all, But I think if we see someone who needs it, or I didn't need it necessarily, of course, probably Swami thought I needed it, but for him to show his love through something that was so precious to him, a simple photograph, but a very powerful gift from Swami to give it to me. He wanted me to have it, actually. So that was very beautiful. You can keep going because of time. Again, this was a few months before the last birthday before his physical body passed on. He actually called all the volunteers. He said, you got to come today. He went to each one of us twice and gave vibhuti. It was such a beautiful, we didn't realize the impact of that till a few months later. Okay. In the last few years, we've been very involved in service activities across the world, but definitely in Africa. You can keep going through them. We've been in Benin and Nigeria, East Africa, and then most recently last year in Madagascar. Thousands and thousands of people, who need this help. We've been able to. It's all temporary, but a lot of times it's not the temporary aspect of it, but the love, all the volunteers show. I think that's much, much more important than a week or two of medicines that we give. I think we need to recognize that, because sometimes we plan things and we say, what are we doing? Which is to some extent true as well, by giving few weeks. But for them, it's not as much that as that interaction we have had with them. People don't talk to each other. People don't talk with so much love that they notice from Sai people, right? Sai members. That is the important aspect of the work, any work that we do here in our communities. I think we always have to be cognizant of that. Simple eyesight by giving glasses. People who have never seen for years, now they're able to see. It can keep going. The different services we have had, gynecology, Priya was part of that team, physical therapy, keep going. And then last time, I was able to do on the field endoscopy. Now we actually have disposable endoscopes. Not great for the environment, but we were actually able to do scopes in the field actually, which is amazing for people who need it. And here are the young adults. We see Sai there, without whom, this again. I always say, I always love to recognize and really appreciate, the love, the intensity. They keep us going. They keep us young. They keep us thinking. Never underestimate the power of our youth. Next. I want to end with 2 slides. Now, this was a beautiful experience for me and part of a dream. And I always feel, how do we stay in that movement of total surrender at all times? Swami's definition of surrender is really recognizing the divine in everyone. He says, you say you surrender, you're giving me, I gave you that. So what exactly are you surrendering? But anyway, so I had told someone one day in a wedding reception, I told one of the Sai aunties, Auntie, I was so confident, I was a young adult, I'm at there in my life that I'm ready to give my life for Swami. I said it, I meant it, end of story. That night, I have a dream. In that dream, I'm sitting inside Prashanthi Nilayam on the stage in the Kulwant Hall. I was the only guy on the stage. Thousands and thousands of people. Bhajans are going. I could just hear the bhajans, and Swami's walking through the crowds. He comes straight to me. He starts waving his hand. Vibhuti just starts pouring and pouring and pouring. I'm completely drenched in Vibhuti, and he leaves. That was a dream. And when I got up, I was thinking, always think about things that happen in our lives, whether it's good or bad, something as profound as this, as a lesson. Ever since then, I've always think, how can I be in that state of surrender, of giving every single moment in my life? That's how I want to be. Does it happen? Not always, but I think a lot of times we have to be intentional sometimes of getting to that point. So it was such a beautiful experience to me. Last slide. So one of the things is that we as an organization, we as a community, we work well together, and I think that we can do a lot when we get together in a unit. Swami always talks about unity and the diversity that we see. How do we stay united? And the best way is to loving each other and seeing the divine aspect and nothing the external. Go straight into, and that's what I like to do these days. And I want to read this quote. And so when Swami came for the GI unit, I was showing him his own quote, and I was telling him how much everyone helped me, but I was also trying to read his own quote to him. It was kind of funny. But I'll read this quote. Together, all together, the knowledge we have gained, we shall brighten and brighten till it enlightens all. Together, all together, we shall share as friends the fortune we have earned, the vision and thrill. Together, all together, we shall acclaim peace till we raise its praise into worshipful deeds. Together, all together, we shall intone the pranava. Om, 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 we shall together sing. I really wanted to tell Swami, not only express my own gratitude, but gratitude for him kind of, executing this incredible will of his and getting everyone to help, and like we help each other to serve our own communities, actually. Again, it's such a great honor to be here. Thank you for having me. I feel so blessed to be here.